Welcome, everyone. Good morning. Good day, wherever you are. I like that Zardoz. Ireland, ho! It's like Thundercats. Thundercats, ho! Welcome. All right, everybody be quiet for Rabid Wombat on this conference call. Shh. Okay. Well, it is Monday. It's a long weekend. Busy weekend. Very busy weekend here. Hopefully everybody had a good weekend, or at least a calm, relaxing weekend. It's about as good as you can hope for. I did want to go over a couple of little things before we got started on the main event today. Just a couple recaps, things that are going on. So the Zentradi shuttle is successfully glued together. I magnetized the base and the model. Makes that nice click. It looks great. Unfortunately, not all is well. I went to do a little bit of the finishing work, or the next stage, in sealing up that seam there and the gaps on the bottom, and opened up my milliput, which is, again, it's a two-part putty. So you've got my specific milliput, there's a yellow stick and a gray stick, right? And you break off little pieces, you mix them together, it turns into putty, you smooth it out, done, right? The yellow stick looked fine. The gray stick had turned this like really gross looking shade of brown, and it was really wet. Not what it was supposed to be. So I threw that away. So I have more on order, but this project will have to wait until that comes in. Because again, I need to milliput this part and the bottom before I do the coating, and then I can proceed with the project. So slight delay, but these things happen. I mean, that stuff should last forever in theory. I really don't know what happened there, but it went bad. I spent many hours last night taking pictures of this guy. So this review should probably, I just have to finish writing the actual review. Review will probably go up tomorrow, but yes, this is the new Drizzt action figure. It's really cool. I had a really good time playing with this, going through all the poses. Yeah, it's better than I thought looking at it in the package. I like it. And the gimmick with the changing the head and remember, he comes with two different heads, so two different facial expressions and two different hair pieces, and the way they work with this on or off, it's pretty cool. It's fun. And the pieces came on and off really easily, which is nice. But yeah, I like it. He's Drow, so yes, this is Drizzt. Yeah, and I'll talk in the review about the skin tone, which is an interesting topic. But again, even on the artwork for the novels, sometimes he's depicted like this. Yes, Happy Hanukkah is perfectly appropriate. Thank you so much. Last night was the fourth night, so we're halfway through. But yeah, very cool figure. I'll share when the review goes live. I do have a question for all of you Dungeons and Dragons people out there. And this is, as far as I know, this is a reveal. So in that Drizzt figure package, we know obviously it comes with the action figure, the Panther. It comes with a Icewind Dale themed D20, which is neat. And then it said it came with cards. Now I was wondering what these cards were going to be. They look like this. So there are 6 of these cards. There's a creature or set of creatures on them. And then there's some writing. And I don't know what this is supposed to be. And as far as I could tell, there's no note there's no information about this. Do any of you know what this is? I mean, obviously I know what these creatures are, but I don't know what this text is. Yeah, without revealing what all of them are, because I don't want to show off too much in case I'm not supposed to. Some of the some of the creatures are like, oh yeah, I remember those from Driz stories, but other ones are like, well, I mean, these are just goblins. Yes, he's fought goblins before, but yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I don't know, and there's no information on it. I'll have to go. Maybe they updated the listing for the toy over on Hasbro Pulse. Maybe it talks more about that now. I don't know. I'll check it out. And then the last other thing I wanted to mention is that over on... Oh, that's true. Yeah, I could try to match the language with... I mean, I'm sure they're online. But yeah, in the any of the player's handbooks or Dungeon Master's Guide, that is a good idea. Over on Jessica's Discord, which somebody can grab a link, or you can get there. You can figure it out. But we are starting a book club, my book club, on her Discord. And I've talked about this book before, but we're actually going to pull the trigger and we're going to do it. We're going to read Roger Zelazny's Creatures of Light and Darkness. This does tie in very well with mythology because this is about the Egyptian gods in the far future with space travel and all sorts of really, really cool stuff. I love this book. I've read it before. It's been a while since I read it last, so I'm looking forward to it again. As I've talked about, it's short. It's about 200 pages. That's it. There's no sequel. There's no prequel. It's a standalone. You read it one and done. It's fun to talk about. So we're going to read this. You can pick up copies relatively inexpensively. It's on all of the services. It's on the Hoopla app if you have a library card, which I know sounds weird in 2020. But if you have a library card to your local library, you can get access to the Hoopla app and get up just a ton of free stuff. They have thousands of comic books, like entire runs that you can get as like one. Well, on Hoopla, you're limited to how many borrows you can have per month, essentially. So it works kind of like a library, but like I said, you can borrow like individual comic books, or you can borrow volumes, or sometimes you can get like entire, like an omnibus of like 700 pages as one borrow. It's fantastic. And it's like brand new stuff too, and old stuff. I highly recommend the Hoopla app if you have a library card, or if you know someone who does and can log in that way. Okay, I think that's all the other stuff I wanted to talk about. Now, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about Irish mythology. Now, I said this before, I am not an expert in Irish mythology. In fact, I know very little about Irish mythology, or I don't know if I know anything about Irish mythology, because generally with these things, like the more you look into it, you're like, oh, I've heard of that character before. I know that story. So I'm very excited to look at some Irish mythology today. Now, I was not able to do a ton of research and preparation for today, and I apologize, but it'll be fun just learning about things together. So when I'm looking at a new to me, a new mythology, the kind of things that I'm looking for are, I love to see what the mythology was all about. And essentially what that means is, and we've talked about this, especially with the other polytheistic mythologies, is why? Why did these people have all of these different gods? What were they trying to look for? What were they trying to explain in their lives, in their part of the world? What's unique about their mythology because of where they lived? There's all sorts of neat stuff you can glean about the people, and again, like what were they concerned about in their daily lives? Is their mythology all about, nature and appeasing the gods for travel and things like that, or is it about war because they were all about raiding? And obviously there are lots of things you can figure out there. I'm always looking for, like I mentioned a minute ago, characters that it's like, oh, I have heard of that character, and that can be from other mythologies. It can be from TV shows or something like that. It could be from Warhammer. In fact, when I was looking at other mythologies to talk about, I was looking at some of the Sanskrit epic poems, thinking maybe I'll talk about those or I'll read translations of those. Because I've read parts of the Ramayana before, but I wasn't never like the whole thing. So I looked it up. The Ramayana is like 50,000 pages. It's divided up into books, so like potentially we could look at specific books, but obviously we couldn't do the whole thing. It would take years. But when I was flipping through and sort of looking at the cool stories and remembering what I had once known about them, I came across a character, one of the demons, and it's a name that's been used in Warhammer that I didn't realize was from the Sanskrit, and I looked up and I was like, oh, how come nobody's talking about this? But so Kabanda is a famous name in Warhammer. It's a demon that famously fought against Sanguinius a few times. They add like an apostrophe in it in Warhammer, but it is in the Ramayana, which I thought was cool. Welcome everyone who is coming in. Keen 456. We're going to talk about Irish mythology. Yeah, so that's about. I think that's all the preamble. Now, some of what I'm going to look at and talk about is from Wikipedia, because like I said, I didn't have a ton of time to do a lot of prep, so I'm going to look at Wikipedia. But I did find a website. What is it called? It's called the Celtic Literature Collection. No, sorry. The Celtic Literature Collective, which I found because when I'm looking at mythologies, specifically ancient mythologies, what you really want to do is find original sources. You want to start from the beginning. What's the earliest written source of information about this mythology? And go from there. So again, that's why when you're talking about Greek mythology, the best thing to do is start with Hesiod. It's very early. It's from 700-ish BC. And Hesiod was an amazing writer and wrote out like the Theogony, about where the world came from, where all the gods came from, who they all are, and it's fantastic. It's like, here you go. There's your mythology. There's the basis for the mythology. Irish, it's a little bit tough. Not a lot survives. Not a lot was written down at the time, but there is some stuff. Yeah, Zardoz. There's so much stuff in Warhammer that's just been plucked from other sources. Somebody should write a whole thing about that. Maybe we should. Who knows? Okay, so looking at Irish, we have to start with the Celts. So who are the Celts? Well, the Celts were Indo-European people. And again, we've talked about this before. Most of the mythologies we've talked about have been Indo-European. And there were these ancient peoples who were sort of wandering around Europe. And then they spread out throughout Europe and then down into where modern-day India is. And most of their languages and mythologies are related, so you can find similarities. You can dig through what they spoke, what they believed in, and find out what like these original people did. So Celts are Indo-European. Like I said, there's a cool map where they all scattered around, and so Celtic mythology is obviously polytheistic. They have a bunch of gods. It's described as the religion of the Iron Age Celts. So we're dealing with approximately, what are we talking about for Iron Age these days? Because it has changed. So let's see, 12th century BC to 550 BC is the cutoff. But it varies. So again, when people are first figuring out how to make iron. All right, so the Celts learned from their neighbors. They met up with other people who were around, and their religion apparently adapted as they grew and interacted with other people. And then, of course, Christianity made it vanish forever, practically, because that's what happened. Celtic mythology covers a pretty broad umbrella of specific religions in different places. So within Celtic mythology, we have Irish, we have Scottish, and then more specifically, more granular, there's Welsh, Breton, Cornish, British, Iron Age, and all of these other little offshoots and fringe ones that happen. So now a lot of the Celtic mythology and Irish specifically deals with cycles. So if you've heard of mythological cycle or cycles of the kings, there's a bunch of them. And again, this is the idea that there were these gods and these characters, these kings, and then they fought and they wiped each other out. And then there was this branch of gods and kings, and then they fought and wiped each other out. And then there were these ones. So it's descending stories, descending characters. All right, so let's look at the section on Irish mythology. And if any of you know stuff about what I'm talking about, please feel free to chime in and educate all of us. Because like I said, this is all, for the most part, new to me as well. So the Irish mythology is the oldest body of myths stemming from the heroic age, and is found only from the early medieval period of Ireland. And then again, it ends when Christianity takes over in Ireland. So here we'll see characters that, some characters, some ideas that I've heard of, maybe some of you have as well. So the Tuatha, and I should say, pronunciation, I don't know. We're going to come across a lot of names and a lot of things in this world. I'm going to do my best, but I do not know the proper pronunciations of a lot of these things. And there are some weird things. The Irish transliterations sometimes have there's some interesting accents that go in different ways. There are words where there's a capital letter in the middle of the word, and I'm sure those are all linguistic codes for things. I don't know, so bear with me. Don't take what I'm saying as the ultimate fact on any of this stuff. So anyway, we have things like Tuatha De Danann, and I'll write some of this stuff out, not all of it. Tuatha De Danann. There we go. The Fomorians, which again, if you are into Dungeons and Dragons, the Fomorians have been in D&D forever. So again, talking about things that grab from other stories and other mythologies, D&D does it certainly as well. All right, let's go to the Irish mythology section here. And again, sadly, the manuscripts, the original writings about the mythology, they're few and far between that survive. Most of what does survive is super fragmentary and broken, which is a bummer. Welcome, Eridinsk. We are looking at Irish mythology. We are reading about Irish mythology. So Irish mythology obviously is a polytheistic one. So we've got a bunch of gods and goddesses, deities connected to the land and different features. So again, like waters and land, as we see with other places. There's definitely an idea that there were, at least in the different cycles, that some of the cycles were more matriarchal and then others were patriarchal. And that goes through, that's a thread that goes throughout Indo-European mythologies, that there's this idea that the original mythologies were matriarchal based, and then they were spreading out and talking to other people, then they became patriarchies, essentially. That goes hand in hand with switching from more agrarian societies to more hunting and fighting with others. There's lots written about that sort of things. Have I ever looked at the exalted TTRPG system and setting. No, I haven't. Should I? Not familiar with that one. Let's look at... So yeah, when it comes to the sources that we have for Irish mythology, they are late 11th, early 12th century. Cool. Yeah, Zara, that's awesome. I always love to learn about new systems and things. Oh, okay, cool. Mythic stuff. Great. So yeah, the sources we have don't even come about till later on. There are people writing about what happened long before, and it's like, oh, it's so frustrating. But there are some sources that have stuck around, which we will look at. Muthot says, I grew up in southern Germany, can find remnants of the Celts. Sure. Carnival. Yeah. Yeah, and then the Romans come in, break down everything, or just adapt it and bring it into their own stuff. And yeah, the kids are running around. The little one slept in. He just woke up a little bit ago, so he's raring to go. Okay, so let's look at the cycles, and then we'll look at what the characters and the stories are. So the earliest ones are the mythological cycle. And so this deals with how people came to Ireland, from what I've read so far. So it's about the principal people who invaded and inhabited the island. Cool. So here we get, and again, some of these names might be familiar from D&D and other sources. So we have Fomorians, Partholinians, Nemedians, Furbolgs, the Tuatha De Danann, and the Milesians. Interesting. And then again, because our sources come later, a lot of them are influenced or just straight up rewritten under Christianity. And we saw this a little bit with the Prose Edda, right, with the Norse mythology, that it was written by a Christian. And so the idea was, these are all just stories. They're not real, and really, like, God is almighty, and but these are just stories about people. So when it talks about, where was I here? Crap! I was reading something and I just lost my place. Oh, okay. So one of the original texts here, the Lebor Gabala Aaron, and again, pronunciation, sorry, I don't know, deals with the ancestry of the Irish, going all the way back to like these mythological characters and these people who came there, but it's couched in Christianity, so it's talking about who was there before Noah. It's like, well, okay, sure, why not? So it tells of a series of invasions or takings of Ireland by a succession of people, the fifth of whom, because again, there were, and if you know about Ireland and the actual history of pretty much that whole area, there were a lot of invasions and taking over of people. It did happen a lot. So the fifth series were the Tuatha De Danann, the peoples of the goddess Danu, who were believed to have inhabited the islands before the arrival of the Gaels or Milesians. They faced opposition from their enemies, the Fomorians, led by Baelor of the Evil Eye. Again, Baelor, a name that you probably would recognize from Dungeons and Dragons, other places. Baelor was eventually slain by Lug Lamfada, Lug of the Long Arm, at the Second Battle of Mag Tuired. Pronunciation. With the arrival of the Gaels, the Tuatha De Danann retired underground to become the fairy people of later myth and legend. Lou, thank you. I thought, you know what, I had a feeling that it was Lou. Northern Ireland still fight, yes. Yeah. Ireland is a complex place. Yeah, and like I said, thank you, Ms. Chris. I'm gonna get the name right. It's Chrysilla. Thank you. I am not an expert on Irish mythology. I am learning as we go. Yeah, thanks. And I welcome all knowledge. Anybody who knows things, please share. We want to learn. Lou, cool. So it says it is important to note that by the Middle Ages, they were not viewed so much as gods as the shape-shifting magician population of an older Golden Age Ireland. Cool. So yeah, so again, we're gonna get shape-shifting tales, a lot of local gods, which are obviously important, and we see that in Greek mythology, especially with nymphs and things like that. But even more importantly, in Roman mythology, gods of the household, gods of every town has its own little patron gods. All right. So let's open up. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, we were just talking about that unfortunately that Irish mythology doesn't have. There's not a lot of original sources, which I always look for first when talking about something and learning about it. Yep. Oral tradition, and then what we're lucky to have things that get written down, but then we're lucky that what gets written down gets preserved, and there's not enough. We always want more. Let's look at. No, please. Like I said, I've some mythologies that I go over and talk about. I know a lot about, but others I don't, and we're all here to learn. So thank you so much. Yeah, please correct me, add notes as you have them. Okay, so just looking, we'll continue on with the mythological cycle, but essentially future cycles coming up after that. We have the Ulster cycle, the Fenian cycle, and the historical cycle. And there are gods and heroes in a lot of these things. Let's look at leprechaun, snakes, and clovers. I think you're right, Pandar. That's right. Okay, so I found like a quick guide to Irish mythology. Let's see what we've got here. Celtic society was rich and complex. Well, of course. They all were. All right, mythological cycle, which we just started talking about. The mythological descendants of the goddess Danin, ancestors of the Irish Celts, and the first people to inhabit the island, allegedly. They were demigods, stunningly beautiful and expertly skilled in music and the arts, with magical powers to boot. The mythological cycle is largely concerned with how Ireland first came to be inhabited and the various struggles for ownership that ensued. Okay, that's what we looked at. So they were led by a woman named Césaire. So I've already seen this name written a couple different ways. So variously, the spellings look like that. If anybody knows exactly how it's pronounced, let me know. We should watch the first Leprechaun movie. Quality goes downhill after that, but the first one is so good. Corsair, there you go. Thank you, Pandar. So she was the leader. So again, look, the idea that sort of earlier, especially in the Indo-European system, that the earlier generations of mythologies were more matriarchal, and then became patriarchal later, which again is a complex thing to look at. Well, welcome, Emily. You feel free to hang out here and skip school. Not so much matriarchal. Okay, well, there you go. Soon after they arrived, a great flood wipes them all out except for one lucky survivor, Fintan. Fintan oversees the later settlements in animal form. The first unsuccessful one led by Partholin, and the second led by Nemed. Nemed's settlement breaks up into 3 groups, one of which leaves Ireland. Of the other 2, they spend years fighting before eventually learning to live in peace. Interesting. Kasir. Okay, cool. Nice. Nice. Yeah, and I was talking. Yeah, and the matriarchal idea of the mythology is looking sort of like at trying to piece together like the way back thought as far as the Indo-European ideals. Because again, there's the idea that the original Indo-European beliefs were matriarchal, and then they switched over to patriarchal mythological systems at a later date. It's not clear across the board, but it's something that people talk about. So then later in this cycle, another band of warriors turn up to cause trouble, leading to 2 gods arising. One is Lu, thank you, master of the arts and warfare, and the other is Dagda, the great god with a magical cauldron. Ooh, magical cauldron, that's cool. So the Fomorians and the Tuatha have a huge battle known as the Second Battle of Mag Tured. The Tuatha are victorious, but only until another tribe, the Sons of Mil, come along. The Sons of Mil, which I assume are the Milesians, are said to be the immediate ancestors of the Celts and won the land by vanquishing the Tuatha to the underworld, where they now rule over the fairies. Okay. So we have that. Yeah, certainly the peoples that we're talking about were not matriarchal, but way back in Indo-European, again, possibly at some point they were matriarchal mythological systems. Yeah, schools for nerds. This is definitely no nerdy learning stuff going on here. Ulster cycle. So next up is the Ulster cycle. The stories from which are much better known than the mythological cycle. Okay, cool. They focus on the warriors of King Concobar, one of whom is known by everyone in Ireland and some people here. Now, let's see if I can figure out how to pronounce this name. And this was a name that I have heard before. So this is one of the most famous characters in Irish mythology. This also is a name that pops up in video games and Conover. Thank you. Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm gonna get a lot of these wrong. I'll pop them in chat when I can. But yes, don't rely on me for pronunciations. And I'm also and I'm also that's a good point. I'm also bouncing back and forth between a few different websites, and the spellings are different on every website. They're all spelled differently, so that's fine. Yes, so here it says Cuchulain. Yeah, but I've also heard it. I thought I heard it with more of a harsher, like a Cuchulain. I don't know. Here it says Cuchulain. Cuchulain. I'm gonna say it that way. I'm gonna say Cuchulain. I need an expert. I can probably find a Cuchulain. No. I'm sure there are videos that I could watch, but this is more fun. So this guy is a great hero. He's believed to be an incarnation of the Irish god Lu, who is also his father. His mother is the mortal Dectine, sister of Conover MacNessa. Cool. Well, Pandar, you can't trust me for everything. Not everything. So Cuchulain was born Setanta, and he gained his better-known name as a child after killing Cullen's fierce guard dog in self-defense and offering to take its place until a replacement could be reared. At the age of 17, he defended Ulster single-handedly against the armies of Queen Meb of Connacht in the famous Tain Bo Qualinga, the cattle raid of Cooley. It was prophesied that his great deeds would give him everlasting fame, but his life would be a short one. He's known for his terrifying battle frenzy, or... wow. His battle frenzy is known as Riestrad, translated by one person as Warp Spasm, or another as Torque. Interesting. In which he becomes an unrecognizable monster who knows neither friend nor foe. He fights from his chariot, and he has a famous charioteer and famous horses. That noise that you're hearing is gardeners. It will be done very soon. Maeve. Okay, there we go. And Maeve is a name that we've heard before in other places. You need a Mogo on your shelf? I wish I had room for a Mogo. I'm trying to think. There are... in HeroClix, they did a map that's so you can play on Mogo, essentially. So it's about as close as you can get. So there are lots of stories about this guy. He's got a famous birth, he's growing up, and then, of course, lots and lots of fighting. Yeah, how will I pronounce these names? Incorrectly, most often. Incorrectly. So one of the, as I just mentioned, one of the better preserved stories is the cattle raid of Cooley, the Tain Bo something. So in that story, Cuchulain single-handedly defends Ulster at the age of 17. Let's see. So Maeve has mounted the invasion to steal the stud bull Don Colinga. I wish I knew how to pronounce that one. That one pops up a lot. I'm just gonna keep going ahead. So Cuchulain allows her to take Ulster by surprise because he was with a woman when he should have been watching the border. So we've got some horny gods and heroes here as well. The men of Ulster were disabled by a curse that caused them to suffer from labor pains. Awesome. So it becomes Cuchulain's job to stop Maeve's army from advancing further. He does this by invoking the right of single combat. He defeats champion after champion in a standoff that lasts for months. Wow. Let's see. Did anyone watch a show called Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog? Erdansk, I've heard of it. I don't remember that show. I know of it, and if I saw something, I'd probably be like, "Oh, that's something I remember." Maeve is one of the most powerful female figures in Irish lore and is a villain, but it's called the Ulster Cycle, not the Monster Cycle. Yes, thank you, Ms. Priscilla. I appreciate that. The Unicron toy, yeah. I have the previous Unicron, the one that's only this big, not the kickstarted one. Essentially, that's this big. Ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, truly, 100% truly, the best gods are the horny gods. They have the best stories. The tapestry shirt, interesting. I'll have to look that up. Yeah, because again, I'm learning as we go along. Oh, here we go. I see it. I see another name that we're going to recognize. Before one combat, a beautiful young woman comes to him, claiming to be the daughter of a king, and offers him her love, but he refuses her. The woman reveals herself as the Morrigan, and in revenge for this slight, she attacks him in various animal forms while he is engaged in combat against Loch Mac Mofemis. As an eel, she trips him in the ford, but he breaks her ribs. As a wolf, she stampedes cattle across the ford, but he blinds her eye with a sling stone. Finally, she appears as a heifer at the head of a stampede, but he breaks her leg with another sling stone. After he finally defeats Locke, the Morrigan appears to him as an old woman milking a cow with the same injuries he had given her in the animal forms. She gives him 3 drinks of milk, and with each drink he blesses her, healing her wounds. That's cool. About how he refuses the Morrigan? I'm sure. So, all right. So this is now again, this is obviously just an overview, a brief mention, but this sounds cool because we have ladies trying to get with men who don't necessarily want to be with them. We have lots of animal transformations, which we just read a ton about in Ovid's Metamorphoses, and it's also really cool when you see these stories where something or someone will turn into an animal, something will happen to that animal, and then when we later see them transformed back, sorry about that noise, it'll be done in a second, there are markings or evidence left from when they were transformed before, which is always really cool. Never read any Robert Graves translations. He sucks. Okay, that is good to know. Yeah, they're always good translators and not so good translators. Or let's say there are some enthusiastic translators, but weren't necessarily the most scholarly, or just at the time didn't have access. After one particularly arduous combat, Cuchulain lies severely wounded, but is visited by Lugh, who tells him he is his father, and heals his wounds. When he wakes up and sees the boy troop of Emain Mamaka have attacked the army and been slaughtered, he has his most spectacular Riestrad, his warp spasm yet. And then it describes it. Ooh, this is cool. Okay, let's read this part. The first warp spasm seized Cuchulain and made him into a monstrous thing, hideous and shapeless, unheard of. His shanks and his joints, every knuckle and angle and organ from head to foot, shook like a tree in the flood or a reed in the stream. His body made a furious twist inside his skin, so that his feet and shins switched to the rear, and his heels and calves switched to the front. On his head the temple sinews stretched to the nape of his neck, each mighty, immense, measureless knob as big as the head of a month-old child. He sucked one eye so deep into his head that a wild crane couldn't probe it onto his cheek out of the depths of his skull. The other eye fell out along his cheek. His mouth weirdly distorted, his cheek peeled back from his jaws until the gullet appeared. His lungs and his liver flapped in his mouth and throat. His lower jaw struck the upper a lion-killing blow, and fiery flakes large as a ram's fleece reached his mouth from his throat. The hair of his head twisted like the tangle of a red thorn bush stuck in a gap. If a royal apple tree with all its kingly fruit were shaken above him, scarce an apple would reach the ground, but each would be spiked on a bristle of his hair as it stood up on his scalp with rage. Wow. And with that transformation, it says, he attacks the army and kills hundreds, building walls of corpses. Fantastic. So that's crazy. I definitely want to know more about this wild transformations that he has. And why? Why does he turn into this horrific monster? I'm going to have to look that up and figure that out, because that is, that's crazy. Because I go down to appearance and it says, and again, a lot of this is Wikipedia stuff, so take it with a grain of salt, please. Not everything you read about on the wiki is real. Actually, let me go to the other side. It says, while he is an athletic man and the ultimate warrior, he also has a number of more grotesque features when he heads into battle. He grows in size. One eye rolls back into his head. His hair stands on end with drops of blood at the end of each hair, and he attacks anyone in the vicinity, regardless of whether they're a friend or enemy. Some versions also claim he transforms completely into a non-human beast. Fantastic. Let's see. Yes, other things describe him as being relatively small and pretty, with dimples. Yeah, that's a Thomas Kinsella translation. Yes, neat. That's wild. I gotta go look up. I'm sure there's lots of art trying to depict that horrible warp spasm, but that's fascinating. Cool. Let's see. When his foster father Fergus MacRoich, now in exile in Maeve's court, is sent to face him, Cuchulain agrees to yield, so long as Fergus agrees to return the favor the next time they meet. Always good in mythology to make an agreement about something that's going to happen sometime in the future. That'll never come back to bite you. Finally, he fights a grueling 3-day duel with his best friend and foster brother Ferdiad at a ford that was named Athfir Deed, named after him. The Ulstermen eventually rouse one by one at first and finally en masse. The final battle begins. Cuchulain stays on the sidelines, recuperating from his wounds until he sees Fergus advancing. He enters the fray and confronts Fergus, who keeps his side of the bargain and yields to him, pulling his forces off the field. The other allies panic and Maeve is forced to retreat. At this inopportune moment, she gets her period, and although Fergus forms a guard around her, Cuchulain breaks through as she is dealing with it and has her at his mercy. However, he spares her because he does not think it right to kill women and guards her retreat. Okay, wow. There's a lot going on in this story. Note that just in the little parts that I've just been reading, a lot of repetition of the number 3, which we get all across mythology and all of these stories over and over and over again. Insurance is complicated. Yeah, I gotta find like the real stories here so I can read them, because this stuff sounds really cool. Let's see, on this website, so like I said, I found this website, the Celtic Literature Collective. They do have a bunch of manuscripts and translations. It seems like a lot of the translations are old, so I don't know how good they are. So which story is this? This is the Cattle Raid of Cooley. And Ms. Priscilla, if you know a place online that has good translations, definitely send that over, because I'd love to read them. I can read them on stream. Ooh, okay, that was next. Hold on, let me go. I don't want to bounce around too much. Bree Creeru? Is that what we're going with? Yeah, I mean, hey, we can definitely learn. So here it says, so the next thing after that on the Cuchulain page talks about the troublemaker Bricreru. The troublemaker Bricreru once incites 3 heroes. Dun dun dun. Cuchulain, Conail Kernick, and Logar Budic to compete for the champion's portion at his feast. In every test that is set, Cuchulain comes out on top. But neither of his competitors will accept the result. What is it like when somebody clearly wins and the competitor doesn't accept the result? I've never heard of such a thing. Curoi MacDare of Munster settles it by visiting each in the guise of a hideous churl and challenging them to behead him, then allow him to return and behead them in return. Conail and Logar both behead Curoi, who picks up his head and leaves, but when the time comes for him to return, they flee. Only Cuchulain is brave and honorable enough to submit himself to Curoi's axe. Curoi spares him, and he is declared champion. The beheading challenge appears in later literature, most notably in the Middle Age poem Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Other examples include the 13th century French Life of Caradoc and the English romances The Turk and Gawain and Sir Gawain and the Carl of Carlisle. Interesting. Then we get some other Curoi stories. Okay, well, hold on. I do want to look for raid. Okay. Nope. That didn't make it onto this list. Oh, I see. No, that's not there either. Okay, the Leinster version or the Dunn translation? All right, so we're looking at so one of the tales that we just got the brief part of is from what's translated as the Cattle Raid of Cooley. So Tainbow, is that Cooley? It's spelled Cualnge, but we'll go with Cooley, sure. Hold on. Emily, that is absolutely correct. Even the gods need help in a lot of these places. Miss Chrysalis says there's also Siege of the Feast where the heroes' wives have a battle of wits, but it's never written down. It's believed that it's a part of the story where women in the audience were supposed to improv bits for the main storyteller. That's amazing. That's cool. And we've talked a lot about especially these ancient cultures that had oral traditions, and you'd have poets come and recite just epic amounts of stories, but yet each one would embellish a little bit or improvise or add some special things. But that's awesome, yeah, that there were essentially parts where it's like, okay, now the audience, now it's your turn, come and join in. That's super cool. Okay, Rabbit Womby, we'll start over. All right, from the beginning. Okay, so let's go to... So like I said, I'm looking at a translation of the Battle Raid of Cooley. This is from 1914. So a bit of an older translation. But again, when you're dealing with sort of free copies online, it's not always the latest thing. The host, the youthful exploits of Cuchulain. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look and figure out where the best stories in here are. Charles Squire translation is super dry but very comprehensive. Yeah, often it's like either it's a very it's a very close translation, and very accurate but not super interesting to read, or it's really dramatic and flowery language, but it's like, is it exactly right? Not exactly. And yeah, we saw that with the Iliad when we talked about that. The combat of Kur. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look up and see which one of these is best to read, because there's a lot of words, and I don't want to get started on something that's not gonna be super interesting. Okay, so Cuchulain stories, like I said, there are lots of stories about this dude. Ooh, let's see about he has many lovers, but Emer's only jealousy comes when he falls in love with Fand, wife of Menan MacLear. Oh no, I'm sorry, Menanan. Manannan has left her, and she has been attacked by 3 Fomorians who want to control the Irish Sea. Cuchulain agrees to help defend her as long as she marries him. She agrees reluctantly, but they fall in love when they meet. Manannan knows, and I'm sure I'm butchering these names, Manannan knows their relationship is doomed because Cuchulain is mortal and Fand is a fairy. Cuchulain's presence would destroy the fairies. Emer, meanwhile, tries to kill her rival, but when she sees the strength of Fand's love for Cuchulain, she decides to give him up to her. Fand, touched by Emer's magnanimity, decides to return to her own husband. Manannan shakes his cloak between Cuchulain and Fand, ensuring the two will never meet again, and Cuchulain and Emer drink a potion to wipe the whole affair from their memories. That's awesome. Somebody has an affair, you move past it, but the ultimate moving past it is just drink a potion, never remember it. It's gone. It's like it never even happened. And then, let's see. Yeah, do you want a history professor or a professional storyteller giving the story? I mean, depending on what you're looking at, there are some good translations managed to be good and interesting and exciting, but often it's tilted in one way or the other. But again, that's not to say that a translation that's a little bit looser for the sake of excitement can't be good in other ways. Because again, even when we're talking about these ancient people, like, yes, you'd have these poets go around, poets, bards, skalds, different ways of describing performers. Essentially, they were performing these same stories over and over and over again, but they were putting their own spin on it. They would add their own little details here and there. So for a modern translator to use our current language and find ways to bring out the drama, the excitement about the original story, it's like, well, I mean, that's what they were doing too. So yeah, it's a complicated thing. Freaking unique username. Hello and welcome. We're talking about Irish mythology. We're bouncing around. We're butchering names left and right, but it's all good. Okay, now we're in the section, the death of Cuchulain. Miss Chrysalis says, one thing we have maybe figured out about the ancient Celts from their stories is that spoken word was super important in their culture and rituals and religion. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, and again, and we talked about this going back as early as Hesiod, when Hesiod lists out basically says, and here are the 50 daughters of Nereus, and it's like, we have a pretty good idea that kind of thing was like, this is this poet showing off. Look at how many names I know. Look at how many names I can recite as I'm just naming off, all of these things and talking about it. All right. Death. Maeve conspires with Lugid, son of Curoi. Urk, son of Caber Nefer, and the sons of others Cuchulain had killed to draw him out to his death. Okay, so again, you go out and you live a life of war and fighting, eventually it's going to come back on you. His fate is sealed by his breaking of the Geasa taboos upon him. Cuchulain's Geasa included a ban against eating dog meat, but in early Ireland there was a powerful general taboo against refusing hospitality. So when an old crone offers him a meal of dog meat, he has no choice but to break his Geas. Fantastic. Okay, so if you remember back from especially Gaze. Okay, cool. Geasa, gaze. Awesome. So if you remember, gaze. Perfect. When we were talking about, especially in Greek mythology, one thing I love to discuss is hospitality. Because again, the idea of hospitality in mythology specifically is one of the most important civilizing factors for human beings. Hospitality, yes, Rabid Wombat, and again, I've talked about it a lot and I will continue to talk about it. Hospitality is how we transfer from a society of basically just murdering one another and not caring about people, and cycles of vengeance and brutality and violence, to actual civilizations where people have social contracts and agree not to kill one another for no reason, and how we get systems of justice rather than revenge. And it's so important. And again, also, when we get into laws of hospitality, we get into the laws of man versus the laws of the gods, which definitely in mythological stories, they come into conflict. And we're seeing that right here clearly in this plot to end Cuchulain, because he has an agreement essentially with the gods that he's not going to eat dog meat, but because that's a thing. But they're tricking him because as part of a hospitality agreement, he is offered dog meat and he has to eat it. Super cool. In this way, he is spiritually weakened for the fight ahead of him. Lugaid has 3 magical spears made, and it is prophesied that a king will fall by each of them. With the first, he kills Cuchulain's charioteer Leg, king of chariot drivers. With the second, he kills Cuchulain's horse, Liath Macha, king of horses. With the third, he kills Cuchulain, mortally wounding him. Cuchulain ties himself to a standing stone to die on his feet, facing his enemies. The stone is traditionally identified as Clocafarmor, which is a menhir, located near Dundalk. Due to his ferocity, even when so near death, it is only when a raven lands on his shoulder that his enemies believe he is dead. Lugaid approaches and cuts off his head, but as he does so, the hero light burns around Cuchulain, and his sword falls from his hand and cuts Lugaid's hand off. Oh my god, it's amazing. The light disappears only after his right hand. His sword arm is cut from his body. According to the annals, Cuchulain died in the year AD 1. Sure. That is that's an awesome story. Right, he is a dog. Yeah, that makes sense as well. Yes, he is the hound. He is a dog and cannot eat dog. Oh, freaking unique username. In some previous episodes of the show, I read the whole Prose Edda. Norse mythology is fantastic. So good. And we'll return. We'll do some more Norse mythology eventually, because there are other great versions of the stories. Wow, there's a lot to that story, and it's great. We have magical weapons, and some of this popped up when I did a talk at one point about magical weapons. January. So magical weapons that are destined to kill kings, but of course, kings can refer to different things. Like a horse can be a king of horses. And then we have this really neat death scene that he wants to die on his feet, so he ties himself to a stone. That's cool. And that even in death, his hands or as his head is, his sword falls and cuts the other guy's hand off. That's super neat. And we also have birds. Birds are often omens of death and horrible things like that. Okay, so now there's an additional story here. Conall Kernak had sworn that if Cuchulain died before him, he would avenge him before sunset. And when he hears Cuchulain is dead, he pursues Lugaid. As Lugaid has lost a hand, Conall fights him with one hand tucked into his belt. but he only beats him after his horse takes a bite out of Lugaid's side. He also kills Urk and takes his head back to Terra, where Urk's sister, Akael, dies of grief for her brother. Wow. Wow. Yeah, kings in these mythological stories, they end up getting into some trouble, usually. Oh, and then here's a picture of Cuchulain's death. Let me grab this real quick, and I will share it. I should say an artist's depiction, of course, is what we're talking about. Pop that in here. Oh, why is it so small? So there he is. He has tied himself to the stone so that he can die on his feet. They can't tell if he's quite dead yet because his hand is still holding that sword. Where when they go up to English is difficult for sure. No problem. We welcome non-native speakers who are interested in learning and talking to us. Yeah, cool. And I assume that's his horse, the king of horses, that's dead right behind him. And obviously that is the, how did it describe it? The hero light that's burning around him. Neat. Cool. Yeah, so I definitely want to continue checking out some more Irish mythology. So I'll try to... I really do want to read some like actual text, because I like reading the actual text. So I'm going to find... So again, I found this site does have some good, seemingly some decent translations. So I'll try to find some exciting parts that we can read next time. But as always, I do have to leave too soon. I know an hour, a little over an hour, is not enough, but I got kids and they need to be taken care of during the day, and we hand off and trade off things. So thank you so much for hanging out with me and learning about Irish mythology. Thank you so much to those of you who helped me and shared your knowledge. Hold on, let me get rid of this picture so I can see what I'm doing here. Welcome new people. If you're new, follow me so you know when I go online, if you'd like. How Norse am I? I am Norse in name only. Although I do have a cool shirt. Cool. Thor shirt. And thanks, Ms. Priscilla, so much for your knowledge and helping out today. Hopefully you can come back again in the future. Excuse me. Let's see who is online right now. Yo, I mean, no matter how rusty you are, I mean, back when I was learning and teaching Greek mythology, that was a long time ago. But as I read all of this stuff, I get back into it, and that's super great. I'm only slightly Norse, but yes, I am all meat. Yeah, mythology is so interesting, and again, I'm sure everybody gets tired of hearing me talk about it, but I love mythology because it's really such a crazy insight as to how these people who lived so long ago, how they thought, what they were worried about in their daily lives, what they believed in, what they aspired to. Like it's such a cool connection to these ancient people that yeah, you can't really get. Oh my goodness, that's horrible over there. Is John started his stream? I don't see him. Well, I would love to raid him if he's on. I don't see it just yet. But yes, we will continue talking about Irish mythology. Oh, there he goes. There it is. Now I see it. Next time we'll do. I don't care if you mention a brand. I mean, don't spam the chat with a bunch of stuff, I suppose, but I am an American brand. Okay, we are going to raid my good friend John, who is an amazing artist, hobbyist, and just a really awesome person. Why is he not showing up in this list? I swear to God, the raid menu just decides to break sometimes. Let's see if I can figure out how to do it the casual way. Okay, here is raid. I'm an American brand. Sir John. M1 Sir John. Okay, here we go. This should work. Again, sorry about the long sign off here. Tune in later on today, 5 p.m. Pacific. I will be on Jessica Nerdy channel. We will continue reading Dune or whatever other crazy stuff we get into on that show. It's possibly the craziest show every week on Twitch. Raids are hard. Okay, here we go. Let's come back. And then this week we've got Toy Tuesday tomorrow morning. Wednesday will be Warhammer Wednesday in the morning, and then a very special Among Us game that has mythology built in. You might see some of these characters played by people in there. And that will be slightly later time than usual, 5 p.m. Pacific on Pete Wiz's channel. He is in the chat, so tune in for that. Yeah, we're going to play an Among Us game where we're all mythological characters trapped on a spaceship or a building or whatever is in Among Us. I gotta brush up on the game. I haven't actually played it yet, but it'll be great. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. Yes, and we'll have guests. Yes, lots of cool guests. Okay, I'm gonna try this raid command now. See if it works. Hey, here we go. Raiding is about to happen. Yeah, lots of stuff going on this week. We'll talk more about it later. This channel is intended for mature audiences. Okay. All right, well, good luck. Bye. I think I'm offline.